How's it going, everyone? In this video, I'm going to be doing a review of the book Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. So, The Richest Man in Babylon is a book about finances in general, and it's best for those who have an interest in that realm and kind of getting their finances tightened up and building wealth. And it's a little bit on the easier or lower end of the spectrum in terms of skill or difficulty, right? It's more general and a little bit of a more beginner mindset, but a really good and fundamental approach to building wealth and thinking about money. The difficulty to digest is a little bit strange because the book is really straightforward and easy to understand in terms of the stories and the concepts, but the actual writing is a little bit dated, right? It uses stuff like if thy has thine most shekels, like these kinds of words that aren't really in common use anymore. So some people will find it pretty hard to get through, while others, who aren't really bothered by that kind of language or can adapt to it quickly, will be able to get through it fairly easily. So it just depends on how much that style of language bothers you, but the concepts themselves are very easy to pick up. So The Richest Man in Babylon is a well-known finance book, well-regarded. If you can get through some of the styling issues, the language styling, there are a lot of really nice, clear key concepts. There's a lot of stories. The different messages are kind of hammered home in different ways so that you're able to get it from different angles and really understand what it is that's trying to come across. Now, at the core, it's basically, these ideas of don't spend more than you make and find ways to use your money to accumulate even more wealth. And I'll go over a couple of other points or highlights that come up in the book. One of the core concepts is that the wealthy value hard work, and that to build wealth requires some amount of hard work, especially in the beginning as you start accumulating wealth to use later and to push into your other projects and investments. So the core idea here is that you can build skills that create value, and then by getting more skills, you basically add to the overall pot of value, right? It's not a zero sum type of effort where, like, if you get better at something, someone else gets less. It's that you're able to produce more things of value, which just increases what's in the world and what can be traded. So going along with that, the hard work is necessary and discipline is necessary to build up those skills and create more value. So one of the major themes in the book is that gathering wealth is not based on luck. Now, your starting position, whether or not you have wealth to begin with, or like the kind of family you're born into, or the sorts of resources you have, are luck to some degree, but the actual process of building wealth doesn't have anything to do with luck. So if you understand the process, you can start building wealth from any position. Now, it may be faster if you start in a better position, but you can use these principles regardless of what's going on. It's highlighted really strongly that to build wealth, it's more about knowing what to do and understanding the principles than it is having specific things, right? If you have someone who knows how to build wealth and they lose everything, they will be able to build wealth again. Whereas if you have someone with a lot of wealth who loses it but doesn't understand the process, they won't be able to recover. And in the same vein, someone who has wealth but doesn't know how to keep it is destined to lose it. That's reinforced quite a few times throughout the book. Another major theme in the book is setting a budget or making sure that you're saving some amount. And the book recommends at least saving 10%, right? This idea of paying yourself first. And it all folds into this greater concept of kind of using your money to build more wealth. But you need to keep some of your wealth and some of your money to be able to invest into these other projects. If you constantly just spend all the money you make, you'll never have an opportunity to invest any of it. And by setting a budget, you can kind of make sure that you're spending on things mindfully and spending on things that improve your life instead of just kind of, oh, I'll buy this here, buy this there. Oh, wow, I'm out of money. That's something that is very common and leads people down a path where they're not really falling behind, but they're also not really getting ahead. So setting a budget is another important theme that comes out in The Richest Man in Babylon. The next major theme is investing with wisdom, right? So once you have saved some little amount of money, what you need to do is find a way to put that money into a project that's going to produce more money in the future. And the main idea is that you find projects that either you are intimately familiar with or you find people who have a track record of creating more money with money, right? Projects that have been successful. it's more risky and not really worth it for the average person to invest in these projects that you have no idea, right? So if your brother comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to create this project, and I kind of have this plan for it," if that person hasn't been successful in other realms and hasn't been able to use money to make more money, that's a more risky bet and it's not a wise investment. Now, you personally can decide if that's something you want to do, and if it's with family, maybe it's a little bit closer. But if a stranger or an acquaintance makes the same thing, like, you are taking on a lot of risk, and there are ways to mitigate that risk by being wise with your investments and looking at places that people have already made money. Now, if you get farther down the line, you can be a little bit more open to risk. And again, like, this isn't the way you have to live, but this is kind of the approach recommended in this book. Another part of investing with wisdom is making sure that you don't immediately spend the profits you make, right? So if you invest $100, you get an extra $10 out of that investment. The Richest Man in Babylon suggests that you use that $10 for further investments, not on spending, right? This is how you get that compound interest, that snowball effect. And there may be situations where you want to spend some portion of it, but reinvesting at least part of what comes out of your investments grows that snowball faster and helps you accumulate wealth much quicker than you would otherwise. In fact, you kind of get back into that problem. If you're spending exactly as much as you're making, even if it's on interest, you're not going to continue accumulating wealth. The last piece of this investment idea is recognizing that this process takes time, right? It takes time to get that extra $10 and put it back in and get some money back from that. And this process of building wealth takes time. It's not something, there's not a get rich quick scheme. It's something that you should expect to kind of incrementally build upon to build your wealth. Now, the last major theme that comes up is helping others, right? When you start getting money, often you will have people in your life who want to get some of that money to help themselves. And the recommendation in this book is basically that knowledge is going to be more useful than actual money. So if you can teach people some of the principles for continuing to make and accumulate wealth, that's way more valuable than giving them money, right? Because if they don't understand how to keep that money, they're just going to lose it as well. So the other part of this is, when it comes to loans or giving away money, kind of like with the brother example, if another individual doesn't have a history or a track record, you should only loan them money that you can stand to lose, right? So you shouldn't be betting your life savings on someone who hasn't accomplished anything and has no record, because it's too much risk to take on. And if they fail, then it creates a huge rift, right? But if it's money that you don't need or that you're okay losing, then the upside is you help someone out, you get a benefit, you get some sort of return. And the downside is you lose this money, but it's not something that's important to you. And it's just a safer way to approach things, both emotionally and actually financially. So, final opinion: The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason is a good book if you want to kind of get some fundamentals of finance and don't mind the language. There's some really good core concepts in there, some really nice stories, some really nice ways of highlighting ways to think about finance and accumulating wealth. Again, the very, very core concepts are simple, but they are useful, and it is something that not everyone knows and not everyone lives by. And even if you do know these principles, it's kind of nice to get these different angles and have a refresher. So definitely recommend it if it sounds like it fits in your wheelhouse. A couple other considerations. There is a section that's kind of talking about having the soul of a slave versus not having the soul of a slave. And that particular section and language hasn't aged especially well. And even so, just the core concept isn't great. It kind of implies that certain people have an inherent disposition to be a certain type of person, which I personally don't think is true, right? There are a lot of factors that have influence on the outcomes of somebody. And those pieces can just come across very insensitive. So something to keep an eye out for. There is also a section that kind of talks about how redistributing any amount of wealth is extremely unfair. So it's just a very pro-capitalist, strong position. And while there are good arguments for and against capitalism, nothing is really explored here. So I just wanted to highlight that that's kind of the fundamental position being taken here. And if that's not something you're ready for, then you may want to just approach it knowing that that is the core position underlying some of these ideas. But again, the core concepts in the book don't necessarily rely on super strong capitalism. It's just a theme that happens to come up. All right, now on to the applicable content questions. 1. What is your current relationship with work? How much effort are you putting in? 2. Do you have a budget? How are you allocating money on a monthly basis? 3. If you had extra money, how might you invest it? Would that investment be risky or would it protect the principal? So that's all I've got for this video. Hopefully that gives you a couple of the core ideas about the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, and a couple different key concepts that you can start thinking about and an idea of whether or not that book appeals to you. That's all I've got for this video. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, topics you want me to cover, throw them down in the box below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. And I will see you next time.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. Reflect, take action, and enjoy life. See you next time.